writing lessons. In today's video, we are going to be talking about what the statement of the problem means. Okay, so what the statement of the problem means is what we are going to be talking about. So let us start with explaining it to you. Okay, so what do we actually mean by the statement of the problem for any research? Simple and short. Before writing any research, take note, there is something that must have motivated that research. There is always a reason that prompts you to embark on a research. So what we call the statement of problem is that reason, that one reason, those two reasons or more that prompted you in the very first place to go about investigating a matter, okay? That is writing a research, okay? Embarking on a research. So what we classify or what we describe as statement of problem is that statement in your research work that talks about what motivated the research, what prompted you in the very first instance to embark on the research. So statement of problem is that one thing, those two things or more that prompted you to go about investigating a matter, to go about putting up a research. Now, in your research documentation, what we want to also discuss, having said what statement of problem means, if you didn't hear me, please hear me well. Statement of problem is that one thing or more that you can say made you go into writing a research or investigating a matter, okay? So, now, in what part of your research project do we usually find the statement of problem? Do we usually find you putting down that thing that provoked the research? It is in your chapter 1. And your chapter 1 is called the statement, your chapter 1 is called the introduction. So in the introduction, there are so many subheadings, okay? Statement of problem is one of the subheadings you find in your chapter 1, being the introductory chapter, okay? Now, why it is very necessary for you to incorporate statement of the problem into your chapter 1, being the introduction of your study, is that it is that component of your chapter 1 that will make your would-be reader, anybody that picks up your research or your research documentation to go through, it is that component of that chapter 1 that tells the person that this is the reason that prompted this research. This is the motivation that based on which this research was provoked, okay? So the statement of the problem for any research is usually a subheading in the chapter 1, being the introductory chapter of that research. So what two things have I told you? I have just told you what statement of the problem is, and I've also told you where in your research project you can actually find, or you should actually put your statement of problem. Number 1, statement of problem, take note, is that statement. It is that statement or that thing you can hold on to that motivated your research. Now, you could actually put your statement of problem in one paragraph or two paragraphs or more, but put together, whether in one paragraph, two paragraphs or more, what the statement of problem does is to communicate to your would-be reader that this is what motivated this research. Now, take note, at the very beginning I said that no research actually comes into existence without a motivation. For instance, if your choice or if your quest, your investigation is all about wanting to know the alarming rate of pregnancy in a particular community, or your interest is based on observation to know what is really causing a particular type of death. People are dying but not dying normally in a particular area, and you want to know what is really causing so much death in the population in that area. That investigation comes as a result of a motivation. The same thing applies to the one I mentioned earlier about the alarming rate of pregnancy, teenage pregnancy probably in a particular area. It is also out of a particular motivation you would want to embark on that research. So what we call the statement of problem is that motivation that provoked a research. It is the motivation for a research. It is the motivation that provoked a research. Now, where in your research project should you, writing a research, put your statement of problem? You should be putting your statement of problem in the introductory chapter. That is your chapter 1, okay? So your introductory chapter is the chapter 1, and your statement of problem should find itself there, okay? probably just after the background of the study or after your aim and objectives. So statement of problem is that motivation that provoked the research. 2, statement of problem in your research finds itself in the introductory chapter. Now, hold on to those 2 things and let us progress. Now, what else should we know about statement of problem? Another thing you need to know apart from the 2 things I've mentioned, remember I have mentioned what it is. Number 2, I have mentioned where it should be found in your research project. Now, number 3 is this. How do I put up a good statement of problem? Now, this is one area so many students find very difficult to articulate. How to put up a good statement of problem. Now, before you start typing anything into your computer system or your laptop, in terms of wanting to write out that aspect of your work, that is the statement of problem, or before you even start writing it down in the final copy of your work, please take note that it is very important you go back to the drawing board trying to identify the motivation that prompted that research or the motivation that provoked that research. If you can put down those things you saw by means of observation or by means of investigation, preliminary investigation, that provoked the research, then you will be able to articulate a good statement of problem. Now, let me give you an instance. Now, another thing I need to tell you, okay, I have just told you a third thing, and what I have just told you now is that if you must or if you want to write a good statement of problem, then try to remember or try to recall, try to put down those things you observed preliminary in the preliminary stages of your work, or those things you investigated in terms of carrying out a preliminary investigation that prompted you to say, oh, I must write this, I must investigate this. Now, whatever motivated that investigation, remember, research is an investigation or an inquiry into life or nature with the aim of leading to new knowledge, or with the aim of making discoveries, okay? Discoveries that will be applied to society. Now, so now that we know that research is an investigation, take note of the third thing. I am saying that if you must write a good research project as it concerns that component statement of a problem, if you must write a good statement of problem, then you must be able to jot down 1 or 2 things that motivated your research. Those 2 or more things that made you say you are going to embark on a research or investigate the matter. If it was the alarming rate of teenage pregnancy in your community or your area, and you saw your question was, why should there be so much teenage pregnancies in this community? I must investigate it. That reason that made you want to investigate the alarming rate of teenage pregnancy becomes the statement of problem. Okay? Now, so now that we know that the statement of problem number 1 is that motivation that provoked the research work. Statement number 2 is that the statement of problem is found in the chapter 1 of your research, the introductory chapter. And number 3, writing is a good statement of research of your research requires that you must be able to put down 1 or 2 things that provoke the research. Let's go to number 4. In number 4, take note. For you to put down a statement of problem, I must tell you this, that the statement of problem, the style you use in writing down your statement of problem, depends on the kind of research you are doing, okay, or the kind of research you are embarking on. Now, take note. Let me give you an example. Let's assume that you want to investigate, let's say, the relationship between 2 things, two variables that have not been observed by anyone or have been observed by someone but in another area, but you want to observe the relationship between those 2 variables in your area. Okay? Now, one way to go about writing a statement of research, in this case, may depend on whether someone has written on the relationship between those 2 variables. Okay? Now, one way to craft a statement of problem, if there are several authors who have written on that particular subject matter you want to write on, but have not covered certain aspects you want to cover, then you can frame a statement of problem in that direction. In that case, what is proper in putting up a statement of problem could be in let's say a particular author worked on that particular work somewhere in 1960. He investigated the relationship between a variable x and a variable y in 1960, but failed to investigate it in a particular direction. Your statement of problem could come in this manner. Ogolo 1960 investigated the relationship between x and y using this particular technique. You can now state again another person who used that technique subsequently after Ogolo 1960 had worked on the relationship between x and y using that technique. Now, your work may be to look at a different technique for observing the relationship between x and y, different from the ones they had used previously, and more efficient probably than the ones they had used previously. So what you'll be doing to craft or write out a good statement of problem will be to tell us chronologically 2 to 3 authors who had worked on the relationship between x and y, stating their techniques and the demerit of their techniques. Now, when putting up a statement of research problem, you will start telling us that this one in 1960 observed the relationship between x and y using technique Z. But since technique Z was not good enough because it had these lapses, someone in 1973 picked up from there and investigated the relationship between x and y using a different technique, an improved technique to that which was used in 1960. But since even with this new development, there was still a demerit, another author again in 1984 picked up the work and investigated the same relationship between x and y using a different approach or a different technique, but could not seem to cover one aspect that you are now looking at as a demerit. Therefore, your work would want to investigate the relationship between x and y using a technique different to the 3 previous techniques used in investigating x and y, but more efficient than the techniques used previously. That would be one pattern with which you can put up a good statement of problem. What is this pattern? Stating chronologically the years in which what you are writing on had been worked on by previous authors, but not in the direction you are working on it. Okay? Stating the demerits, stating the tools they used in doing that investigation, but stating the demerits or what they did not cover in each instance. Okay? And ending your paragraph with what your intention is, telling us where you would come in to overcome the demerits of the previous work. That would be a good way of stating the research problem. Okay? Now, that is just one style to go about stating your research problem. It may also be that is not the style you want to use. Your statement of problem could also be in this manner. Let's say in a particular society, there's an alarming rate of a particular disease scourge. Let's say a disease X is prevalent in that particular society, and you want to investigate why this disease is becoming very prevalent in the society or the community where you dwell. Your statement of problem may not be just like the one I have just stated, where you had to talk about what people had done previously and the techniques they use, as well as the technique you would want to use to overcome their techniques. No, your statement of problem for this particular one I mentioned last cannot be the same like that. So you may choose to follow this style. In this case, if there is a prevalence of a particular disease X in that society where you dwell or the community where you dwell, and you want to investigate the matter, a way of putting up a statement of research, that is statement of problem that provoked your research, would be to start with probably telling us that this disease has not been here. Preliminary investigation has shown that poor distribution of or poor hygiene level in the society, let's say bad type of water supplied or bad quality of water supplied, or one thing or the other, are suspects, so to say, that may be causing this. And this particular study would want to investigate to know which out of these factors may be the real reason causing the prevalence of disease X in your community. Now, you will take note of the fact that this is another way of stating the research problem. and I was not using the pattern I used earlier on, in which case I had to state chronologically what had happened per each author using the different techniques and the technique I would want to use to overcome their own. No. So in this case, what are you doing to state the research problem? You are actually telling us what preliminary investigations or observation had told you, that there were 4 or 5 suspect factors that may be causing the prevalence of disease X all of a sudden in your community, and you want to investigate. You don't just want to conclude that out of the factors causing it, this is the one, this is the major cause, or this is the only cause. You don't just want to conclude, and that is the reason for investigating the matter. Okay, so what we are saying in essence is this: statement of the problem, remember, number 1, simply talks about the motivation that provokes any research. So no research can be written without a motivation. No research is embarked on without a motivation. And what we call the statement of the research problem is simply that one thing or those 2 things that provoke the research, you embarking on the research. Number 2, the second thing we have said in this particular chart is this. Take note. Apart from knowing what statement of the research problem is, the question is this: where in your research project should you, writing a project, put your statement of problem? Where should your statement of problem be found in your research documentation? It should be found in your chapter 1, the introductory chapter, okay? Probably after the background of the study or after the aim and objectives of your study. But your statement of problem should be found in your chapter 1. Number 3, how do you put up a statement of problem? Putting up a statement of problem requires you to write down those things. Put down those things one after the other, you know very well, based on your observation or preliminary investigation, that prompted you to say you want to begin embark on this research, the research you're about writing. Okay? So, number 3, take note of those points. Take note of those things that prompted you to say you want to embark on the research. Then number 4, when writing the statement of problem, take note. The kind of statement of problem you write may differ from statement of problems written by some other persons carrying out different research projects. Okay? So you must write a statement of problem unique or peculiar to your own investigation. And the style with which you write your statement of problem depends on the kind of research you are embarking on. So, statement of problem differs from research to research. But in any case, whether it varies from research to research, it communicates one thing to anybody who reads your work. It communicates what provoked the research. Okay? Now, still on this 4th thing, I want to tell you that if you want to write a research that requires the development of a new technique for investigating probably the relationship between 2 variables or more, then it is best you tell us what authors previously had done and the techniques they use in investigating the relationship between those 2 or more variables. Okay? And then tell us the technique you want to use and why it is better. Okay? Now, that will be a good way, or one good way, to put up a statement of research for investigating a matter like that. Now, but if you were to investigate the prevalence of a particular disease in your community or your society, or the prevalence of a particular occurrence in your society, take note, the statement of problem you will be writing probably would not follow the style with which you wrote the previous one. Okay? So, what I'm saying in essence is that number 4, take note, statement of problem you write for your research depends on the kind of research you're writing. That being said, please watch this video again to take note of these 4 points. They would help you in writing a good statement of the problem for your research. Remember, statement of problem is the motivation that provoked your research. It is found in the preliminary chapter, that is the first chapter of your research project, which is your introductory chapter, your chapter 1. Statement of research can be written properly if only you can jot down those things that provoked the research. Okay? And number 4, the style with which you write your statement of problem varies from research to research. But even as it varies, take note, it communicates the same thing. It communicates that one thing or those 2 things or more that made you say you want to embark on the research. That being said, thank you very much. If you're watching this video live, thank you very much for staying tuned to this channel, watching the video live. If you're not going to watch the video live, or you are not watching the video live, then please watch this video over again or watch this video after now and please endeavor to subscribe to the channel. Tell somebody about the channel, tell somebody about our content, and we'll be seeing you in the next discussion on research project writing. Thank you very much.